Hi, class. This is Professor Laney. I'm here for Chapter 3 in Child Development 110, Child, Family, and Community. Getting all set up and ready to go. I do have a fan on right here, so I'm hoping it's not going to be a weird distractor. So let me share screen and let's get started. So this is part of part 2. If you look in our book, it separates chapters 1 and 2 as section 1, and hopefully you finished all the items for chapters 1 and 2, including the first exam. So that's unit 1. And then what the book talks about is chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is unit 2. I break that into 3 sections. So we're going to talk about ecology of the family. Then we're going to talk about ecology of parenting and ecology of non-parental childcare. And I make that its own unit. So you'll have an exam after that. Then we'll have unit 3 exam, which is the last part of it. Ecology of the school, ecology of teaching. So that's 6 and 7. Then I do have another test. And then 8, 9, and 10 is another unit as well. So I take this middle section and break it into 3. So it's a little bit more chunked into little sections that go together. So again, ecology of the family, ecology of parenting, ecology of non-parental childcare, 1 unit. Then we go teaching and schools, another unit. And then we go peers, media, and community. That's unit 4. And then unit 5 is the last 2 chapters, chapters 11 and 12, which are outcomes, which are really, really cool. I just think it's a little bit easier to digest in these little chunks than to have like 1 or like 3 big massive tests versus 5 smaller ones. That's how I kind of look at it. So let's jump right in. Okay, so first we learned about what is ecology, what is sociology, why do we talk about child development, what is actually socialization. It's a lifelong process. I'm going to say that all the time. It's not being social with your friends. It's a lifelong process. Being social with your friends is a tiny blip in that little pebble in that pond. Then we talked about what are agents of socialization. Who are those agents? Where do they show up? How do they do it? Methods of socialization. But now we're going to actually get back into that microsystem that has family, schools, peer, media, community, microsystem, right? Those directly affect the socialization or they influence a child. So if you look at the Bronfenbrenner model, the very first ring that goes all the way around. And there's a format to each chapter, if you noticed. At the beginning, there's always a socialization sketch, and this one talks about Prince William. I didn't really talk a lot about it in this lecture, but you can read how Prince William, if he was born to somebody else's family, how would it be? And did he have to earn his place? Not exactly. It was a scribe, and we'll talk about more of that, versus you or I who are not royalty, And so I do like pointing out the socialization sketches. There's a lot to be learned there. But we'll go forward, and in every chapter, it will talk about, again, that piece of the microsystem, but then I will also talk about the mesosystem influences, like those little side pieces. And just remember, in the microsystem, it's not static. It can move, right? So just because family is not touching community doesn't mean that it won't, right? So this is kind of like a bubble that moves around the child constantly. It's not this flat saucer, like Frisbee sort of thing. It's constantly moving around. I want you guys to start understanding the book is 2-dimensional, but life is not 2-dimensional, right? Okay, so today, especially in the chapter, I always talk about learning objectives. Let's get that going. Learning objectives are like, what are we going to learn, right? In this chapter, it kind of gives you a roadmap. Again, I do take quiz questions and test questions from this. So describe the basic structure and functions of the family. A lot of times we know these things, but we don't know the terms associated. So we're going to learn all those things today. Explain the effects of transitions and how those transitions are different than they were a long time ago. Discuss the macro system influences. Again, macro systems means large. What are the larger societal influences on the family? And are there any? And what types are they? So you'll see in every chapter, it'll talk about those mesosystem pieces. It'll talk about the exosystem pieces, and then we'll talk about the macro system pieces and even the chronosystem pieces, the changes over time. Okay, there we go, macro, chrono, and family empowerment. We always like to wrap up with something positive. So family systems, that's kind of a fancy term for saying what type of family do you have? What system do you have? I grew up in a family where my parents are still married to this day. So nuclear family. So this is the typical definition. Remember, anytime I have this equal signs, it means the definition. Use those in your notes, use those in your outline, do however you want, but make sure that you know this definition. And what is a family? What do they do? Why aren't we just birthing babies and leaving them in the hospital? Like, again, people have children, so they, you hear young parents who say, I just want to give this child a better life than I had. I want to have all these opportunities I didn't have as a kid. Right? Everybody has different reasons for having children. Some people don't really think about it. Some people are very measured about it. I had to go to classes for 2 years in order to adopt. So, sometimes there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and sometimes there's not a whole lot. It's like, oops, we're having a baby. Great, no big deal. It's all blessings of life, right? And so I had this this older video clip in here in the 2010s, and now that we're way past that, I have something a little bit better. And this is a good one to watch, actually, if you can follow that link. I put the same link in the module, and it's really cute. It talks about now we have these families and these families and these families, and then there's Modern Family. This next clip that I have is about how Modern Family has been 10 years old now, at least. And so it's good to watch how things even change in the last 5-10 years. And I'll get to that in just a sec. You've heard me use the phrase primary agent of socialization. That means the first person, the first group of people that a child is exposed to after they're born is their primary caretaker. It could be a man, it could be a woman, it could be grandfather, grandmother, aunt, uncle, obviously mother, father, it could be a surrogate, it could be a doctor, like whoever's holding and literally taking care of this baby is their primary agent of socialization. Now, I firmly believe it takes a village to raise a child, because Lord knows I need lots of help raising my child with a lot of special challenges. But here's the thing, a child can be socialized by anybody. Again, mother, father, male, female, gay, straight, anything, right? It's how we are teaching our child to be the next level of human, and eventually an independent and properly socialized, properly raised, properly taught adult, even though that's different in every respect. And we'll talk about that a lot more here. The family's role, we talked about the aims of socialization in the last chapter. Independence, figuring out your place in the universe, coping with body changes and the aging process, finding meaning, financial support, emotional support, recoupling, finding your own partner. There's lots and lots of aims of socialization, and there's different methods. Sometimes parents are very cognitive about it. Today, we're going to sit down and you're going to learn how to balance a checkbook. That's like old talks right there. Use a debit card or use Venmo. Like sometimes people sit down and will literally structure teaching. Sometimes it's like, hey, come watch me, come with me. I'm not going to tell you what we're doing, but we're going to mow the lawn. I'm going to teach you how by showing you. Sometimes it's very an open structure, right? And sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes it's a culturally saturated piece where when you're 15, we do this. We get ready for your quinceañera, right? My son just celebrated his 15th birthday. We're like, And then outcomes. What are the outcomes of the family's role? Again, to properly socialize a child for the dominant society. Now, again, there's a million different ways you can do that, a million different outcomes, and we'll talk about it. It really depends on what the family values, what the family likes to talk about, how the family likes to teach. Sometimes it's very kind and gentle and nurturing. Sometimes it's not. It's like, you better learn this or else. Those are all techniques. Every family does it differently. And the outcomes are all a little bit different, but generally the same, right? You can have positive outcomes and negative outcomes. We'll talk about that as well. Families have changed. Oh, shocker. Okay. Let me see if I can, this one goes in here. I have another, hold on. It might work, it might not. Let's see. See if I can make a new share. And I will optimize for this video clip. Oh, not supported. Let me try this other one. Okay, I cannot minimize. while I'm zooming, but I can also do this one. I have, let me see if I can find the link. I thought I updated it here. I really thought I updated that one today. Maybe I opened the wrong file. Hold on. Let's do stop share. Hold on. Let's make it bigger. I'm going to pause the recording just one sec so I get it figured out. Okay, I got it. Okay, so let's go back to share screen. We're going to do this one. We're going to share the sound. Hopefully we're past. Yes, I want to get past the commercials. And let's turn on the sound.
Presented in one way, like the Cleavers on Leave It to Beaver.
They don't put the marks up in our school.
And then in the late 60s and 70s, it was the Brady Bunch. Less traditional family units were welcomed into our homes in the 80s and 90s. And a decade ago, Modern Family joined household TV lineups, a welcome portrayal of same-sex families. Because as society has evolved, so too has the idea of the family unit. Families comprised of different colors, sizes, and structures are gaining more visibility and representation.
We are a two-dad family.
We have 2 kids, Ashton and Aria.
And what makes our family is we are built on love.
I'm Gloria. And I'm Sarah. And we are 2 moms, and we have twin girls together and 2 dogs.
My name is Benson. I identify as a trans man, and this is my wife, Blaze.
We have a 2.5-year-old son named Arlo.
Our families are like other families in the sense that we do the same thing other families do. We get up, have breakfast, have 3 meals a day, go to work and go to school.
We argue, we fight, we make up, we do pretty much everything any other family we know does.
For each of them, the path to parenthood was unique.
Because Benson is a trans man, I'm a cis woman, so we always kind of knew that I would be the one to carry the baby. So we did at-home insemination, and it took us 4 months of trying to conceive, which is pretty average, but it was still quite a nerve-wracking process.
Our path to parenthood involved Sarah carrying our twin girls and I adopting them.
I'd say that our particular path taught us to be flexible and to be open to different things.
It started with, exploring options, and we found a surrogate and actually got pregnant on the first try.
Very first try.
So that was exciting. But then in 20 weeks in, she actually miscarried. And so I think that actually transformed us. It kind of took us a while to kind of recover and then try again, and then we were blessed with 2. So we just knew we wanted to become parents, and thankfully we were able to make it happen.
Even though the face of the American family has evolved, many of these families still have hurdles to overcome.
Some of the challenges we face being a 2-mom lesbian family, for sure, is the visibility that our children see in our everyday community. They don't get to see it very often, and they always question, why don't I have classmates that have 2 moms or 2 dads?
A common thing that we get is like, oh, who's the dad? Are you the brother? I'm proud that we've gotten to a place to where we take it as an educational moment. Now I just share, no, well, this is actually my husband, and these are our kids. And surprisingly, the response is never really negative. It's actually interesting. They apologize, take a step back, and say how beautiful it is.
One of the most beautiful things about our family is that we just put a lot of love and intention into creating our family.
As Family Equality Day approaches, it's the future that fills these families with hope.
When we started trying to have a family, I couldn't find resources for us to read and look into. And nowadays I'm finding a lot more that touches on couples like us trying to have a family.
It's gotten easier with our generation, and I hope it just continues to get even easier. I felt it was really important to be my authentic self.
I'm really hopeful that, as parents, and as we continue to have these conversations, that we're going to keep creating the world we all just want to exist in.
That was great. I used to have a different clip in there. Again, it was a little bit older, but at the same time, it was good. But I'm glad that we're all evolving. And let's go back to the slides. Let's do this one. So sweet. And so again, I'll make sure that this updated link is in the module at the bottom as well. So if you have, for some reason, if you had a hard time hearing that one, or you know, whatever, you could watch it on your own through YouTube. So great. So again, some of the basic family structures here, again, this is in your book, and it really kind of expands the explanation. But here, this is something that we can kind of go through really quickly. So nuclear family is the one that you're born into. Excuse me, that's family of origin. Nuclear family is technically just means a husband and wife and a child. So with the video that we saw, you can have a husband and child. It's still a nuclear family. Yeah, it just happens to be two dads, and then you can have two moms, and then there was a transgendered person in there as well. So again, nuclear family just means two parents and a child. So that's been kind of evolving, and it just is a type of a nuclear family, but it's still a nuclear family. I'm not going to get like split hairs with you. I know, like, is it two dads is still considered a nuclear family? The answer is yes, but I'm not going to go through all these different permutations. We know that we have a family. There's nothing wrong with single parenting, nothing wrong. However, it is harder. There are, it's just way more struggles. And so if you can have two parents, hopefully amicably working together, then that's the best option. You don't even have to be married either to have a strong relationship and raise children. Interesting, right? Yeah. So family of orientation, family of the one that you were born into. You don't get to choose that one. Again, even if you're adopted and you're adopted into a family, that would be the family of orientation. You could say a biological family, and then the family that you're born into or adopted into, that is family of orientation. Now, family of procreation is the one that you make on your own, right? And so whether or not you plan that out, whether or not it's a big surprise, you most likely have some sort of other partner involved. As far as we know, we cannot procreate on our own yet. But that day probably will show up soon. And then, so that family of procreation, again, in here doesn't say anything about being married. Well, that one says husband and wife, but again, you can have a nuclear family without being married. Wait, what? We'll talk more about that. Extended family are the people who, like aunts, uncles, grandparents. Now in my house, we have lots of aunties, you know, again, my son's adopted. So we feel like anybody that you want to add into your heart, you can, why not? Right? Aren't we all of one race? We're all one human race, right? Matriarchal family is one where the mom runs the show, right? Then there's patriarchal family where the dad runs the show. And you'll see kind of a split type of situation. A lot of times it's like the mom runs the show until the dad gets home, right? So you can have kind of like a dual orientation there, and that's okay, that works. Egalitarian families are the ones that split kindly, and they kind of balance out. I tell my husband, it's not that you don't wear the pants of the family, I just make sure that they're clean and not wrinkled. So still a boss. And if you're not sure, it's who the dogs respond to first. Yeah. Oh, cats ignore everybody. So so again, you can have a matriarchal family, patriarchal family, or egalitarian is French for equals. Basic family functions, again, as this agent of socialization in the microsystem, the basic family functions, again, why do we have children into a family? What's the point? Why don't we just grow children in a lab and have them get raised by robots? Nope. That's in the future. Hopefully that's not something, hopefully as long as there's warmth and socialization and correct developmental, I might, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Reproduction. Families get together to make more people in the family. Yeah. Socialization and education. Education could be in the book, but education could be life skills. And socialization, again, is that lifelong process to promote and create a sustainable adult, independent adult in our society. Assignment of social roles, who does what in the house. In our house, my teenager takes out the trash now. So that took a long time to get there, but sometimes he does it without, it's awesome. Economic support. There's things like married people do make, as a whole, make more money. Or there's money to pool when there's more people sharing money. Nurturance and emotional support, always important. Let me capitalize that just so we're good. Get it all good. Family transitions. This is a nice way of saying families that change over time. And you know what? Things evolve and people change. And, so and I've noticed in the last few years of the pandemic, sometimes people had to split apart families to go work. I actually am friends with a family who the mom and the daughter live here and the dad lives in Arizona because that's where the work is, but they didn't want to change the child's school because it's a special school. Now, they can still stay married, they can stay separated, they can divorce and still do that. You know, it happens. But as we know, divorce is up, remarriage is up, cohabitation up, and how about never married is up. And so I did put this piece here about Pew Research, and I'm going to share this as well. It's a really great website. Let me double check that I have that going here. Yes, I do. The website I have for Pew Research, if you, this is like one of the America's oldest research centers, and it literally collects data on everything. They do it by phone. They've done it door to door. They've done it for like all these methods. It talks to you everything. But like if I went to home research topics, look at all these research topics, right? And so later, if I'm asking you guys to find articles or research and actual data, it's here. There used to be one where they would have these like interactive columns. It was really cool. They don't really do that anymore because things have changed. But again, I went here straight to marriage, right here, family and relationships. And then it talks about working parents with young children, say finding backup care would be difficult. So they say like 51% of parents who work don't have childcare. What does that mean for child development? We need more teachers, right? So it talks about gender roles and different races and ethnicities, working parents, academic concerns, Latinos, white evangelicals, right? Then talks about politics, Republicans, Democrats. It's data driven. So again, like if you wanted to find something about who's going to have non-parents younger than 50 who say they were not likely to have children is up from 2018. So in 2021, about 20% of people under 50 said, I'm not having kids. Now it's 23. I get that. Yeah, probably not. That's up more. Well, probably yes. It stayed the same. Interesting. Right? And very likely went down. Like I'm definitely having kids, right? This, yeah, right? And this one here, percent of parents 18 to 49 saying they are what? Still have more children someday. Not likely at all. About more than half. Not too likely, maybe for sure. Geez, so listen, this is how things work now, right? This is how life changes, right? Now, again, family transitions also include divorce, right? And I put divorce in the law because I didn't say divorce in the church. Now, a lot of people are married in churches, but if you look up the definition of marriage, as we will show in a minute, let's see where the word church comes in. Okay. So let's keep going here. Next. Okay. So again, and divorce is not the end of the world. And I know that a lot of people have big, strong feelings on divorce, marriages, remarriages, and things like that. Many of you come from the blended family. So maybe your parents were married, had kids, but divorced, and then they married other people, had other kids, maybe got divorced, or maybe married other people who already had kids. So there's like step siblings and half siblings and things like that. And we'll talk about parenting in the next chapter where it talks about who's got what style of parenting, and is it one way at one house and one way at the other house, and things like that. And who do you listen to? Is it a stepmom or the stepdad? Do they get to, right? And sometimes those are better than the biological parents. And there's a lot of different things that happens with transitions. And ultimately, the child is the one who's younger, who's more dependent, who needs more help, needs more guidance. And so when the parents are united front, whether they are divorced or together, married or separate, when the parents are on the same page is when the child benefits. When there's conflict, the child has conflict. It makes, it's kind of like stating the obvious here, right? I've seen a few people do divorce right, like do it, just be like, hey, we don't want to be together, but we are together on the child front. And it's actually a very lovely thing. It's sadly a little bit rare for people to do a really good job in like a divorce situation, but I love it when it does work together. The family functions change, right? Sometimes there's money that changes, there's geographical changes. The family functions, is it 50-50? Is it really 50-50? And who's in charge? Is it legal? Is it emotional? Like, there's a lot going on, right? Oftentimes responsibilities shift, of course. And again, I mentioned like, what if it's, two different things in two different houses, right? You're going to hear that sociocultural thing in one house. Let's say, well, we don't do that here. And over here, maybe we do that here, right? So the socialization and education may adjust, may change, right? So if one side of the divorced parents really push education, the other side doesn't, maybe you're going to have a child who's struggling with their grades because over here they're being supported with their education, over here they're not. So again, struggle, right? And socialization, children are socialized. We said by observation, right? So if you see one parent who's like got the hustle and doing all their work and keeping a clean house, and the other parent who's like sitting in front of the TV drinking, and you see the child seeing this modeling of behavior, which one is the child going to do naturally? What is the child going to want to do naturally? Well, maybe not the hard work and the chores and the hustle. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to be the other stuff, right? So there's this piece where that negotiation and the balance is really hardest on the kids. It is hardest on the kids. Assignment of social roles, the authority. Maybe one parent wasn't such an authority figure and now they have to step up, right? And economic support. I have a friend, when we were 14, her parents got divorced. It was kind of like the first sort of parents that I knew were divorced. I mean, this was like 1980, 86. This was like way back when. There was like, divorce has been around forever, but it was less common back then. And it was kind of a good thing because, sometimes parents, yeah. And, when you're like cowering with your sister in a room and your parents are throwing stuff at each other in the next room, it's time, right? And so that was a big deal, for my friend. I'm still friends with her, still friends with her mom, still friends with her dad. Like, they just don't. It's been 30 years. So time doesn't always change all that. But I know that the dad, he went away but he was financially supporting, and then the mom got the house and the girls, and it was like this thing. But ultimately, the mom still has the house. The girls are like older and married and their kids are in college. But the dad, it's like he had a different life, neither one of them remarried, but you could see one that was like grounded here, and you could see this one that was like, well, I'll live here and I'll live here, like this kind of thing. It's different when you have, again, lots of different variables to figure out, but ultimately we have to protect that child and make sure that it's developmentally appropriate what you're asking a child to do in terms of chores in each house, that you don't use your child as a therapist. It's all these different things. And so family transitions can be a big deal. This emotional support is the key factor. When children have strong emotional support on both sides, that is the best. That is the best. Now I'm going to make this kind of big because I love this picture. I picked this picture on purpose because this is kind of like how it was in the old days, right? And so again, the transition, we talk about the finances changes for both parents, right? I could tell you right now, with rent and mortgages and this part of the country, it's crazy. Like there's a lot to consider. 2 sets of houses, 2 sets of rules. Again, what if there's step siblings, there's, half siblings. So I like this picture because you can't tell. So this kind of looks, he's like the only like grown-up guy here, right? So you have, is this the wife? And are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 daughters? Or are these like her sisters? So her and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sisters. And then like, is this their children? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 children? Like, wow, I see his hairline, the nose. And how old is this person? Like, she looks really old, but she's probably not. And she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids. Yikes. Wow. Right. And so, or maybe this man is married to all these women. No, it's wild. You know, in our history, we had a lot of different things going on, and this is probably their Sunday best, and they all are kind of glowering at the camera was, you know, maybe new back then. They didn't know what it was, and so they're just staring at it, right? So domestic responsibility was the mom an at-home mom, and now has to. So I have a friend who got divorced, got remarried, her husband retired, her kids started college, they moved to Texas, and for the first time ever, my friend had to get a job. I mean, not ever. She had a job when she was pregnant with her first one. And so it's like, she's like, my husband's retired, I'm supposed to be retired, and now I'm working. Like, she's like, we moved to Texas because it would be cheaper. Not exactly, all this business. So it's one of these things is like, things change, things happen, right? And emotional support, who gets the friends? I've had friends get divorced and been told, this, you get this friend and you get that friend. You don't need, you can't talk, like, hilarious, cracks me up. But again, the point is, in family transitions, we need to keep it the best for the kids. Effects of divorce on children. Oh, yeah, again, I kind of mentioned this before. There's not really a good time when they're super young. They don't understand what's going on, but when they get to a certain like stage, like in preschool, they start to understand, like, my mommy and daddy aren't together anymore. Or it could be mommy and daddy. But when it gets a little bit older, like school age, they start to actually believe that's their fault. As they're developing their emotions, it's hard to put this on them, right? And so not until the age of 10 does a child understand conflicting feelings at the same time. Like, I love my daddy, but I hate him when he drinks. I love my mommy and daddy, but I hate that they got divorced. That kind of stuff. And boys are harder hit. Most likely because gender roles are very women talk more. Women have, and girls, and can like vent and talk and express and figure things out while we're talking. And men and boys aren't always taught and socialized to talk it out. It's like, suck it up, rub some dirt in it, walk it off, be a man, don't cry. So boys have a lot of big emotions, but they have nowhere to go because they're not taught how to get them out and talk. And again, most courts want 50-50 as long as it's best for the child. And again, how is this child being supported by either parent, right? And again, really the bottom line is how that relationship between the parents, even though it might be evolving or different, as long as that stays on the up and up, that really helps a child. It's wow. So I mentioned here binuclear family, when you have a child who goes between homes, right? Yeah, I have a friend who he's remarried and he's got two small children with his new wife, but he's got, you know, a disabled son with his first wife, and they live in different states now, and it's just this thing, and it's really hard to manage those things, but do your best and what's best for the child, right? Again, sometimes there's differences in culture and religion in certain families. And so sometimes children have a hard time shifting between, like, my mom's side of the family is like hyper religious, and my dad's side of the family is like a bunch of hippies, like no religion. So sometimes there's that thing. So again, when you're not putting the child in the middle and making the child make decisions or expecting them to be above and beyond their developmental level. So an 8-year-old, we talk to them and we treat them and we put them words in an 8-year-old fashion. If you have an older child who's developmentally at 8, you speak to them at 8. So there's a lot going on. And I know a lot of you have experienced a lot of these things. And this all goes into who you are as a person. Again, you could have been a child of a nasty divorce. You could be a child of an amicable divorce. And that could, like, I have a friend who wouldn't marry this one girl. He was like dating this girl forever. And he's like, I won't marry her because her parents are divorced and she's going to want a divorce. I was like, so, and she's like, no, I hated that my parents were divorced. And once I get married, I'm never getting divorced. So it's this thing where we all have these bias of what divorce is and things like that. I have another friend who was like, I will never, ever, ever get divorced. Yeah. I have friends who said, I will never, ever, ever have children. So again, big section of the chapter about divorce on children. I'm not going to read all the words to you, but again, the bottom line is be supportive of the child. It's not about, really not about the adult. If you created a child and you brought a child into this world, the responsibility of adult, whether you're still married, is to properly socialize that child. So if you're saying like, if you even are on the phone and your child's hearing you saying like all women are this and all men are this, like they're going to model that behavior. So again, keeping everything on the up and up and nurturing and supportive for the child is best. So again, I mentioned here that marriage, where do you see the word church in here or religion? Marriage is a legal contract, legal contract. And if you're not sure, get divorced and see how much it costs. It's always been a legal contract. It just happens to be sanctioned in a church. It wasn't always that way. Not always. So a lot of people want to like argue that. It's like, listen, Adam and Eve weren't married in a church. Who's there? Yeah. Right. So we created marriage as a social contract because it had to do with money. Like this landowner had a daughter and you wanted to, and this and that, and this, whatever. And it was who's got that many goats and this much land and that kind of business. Legal contract, legal contract. And again, this is, I think maybe this is where I put the link here for that video. Yeah, it's very sweet. Very, very sweet. We are going to get forward. We have about 15 minutes left for my next meeting. And functional family changes, infertility on the rise. This is almost 15% now, especially with stress. Yeah. And they were kind of expecting a baby boom after COVID. And there was plenty of babies born during COVID, but not a huge baby boom. Like we saw when GIs came back from the war in the 40s, huge baby boom. That's why they called baby boomers. And again, social roles are changing. A lot of stay-at-home dads now, because I just, you know, where the work is, right? My neighbor next to us is a contractor and he works whenever he can, but he's a stay-at-home dad for the most part. His wife makes like lots of money and does all that business. So again, changing social roles, or we have multi-generational families together, right? You may live in a house with your aunt, uncle, and grandparents. That happens. Again, who's, you know, those are all primary agents of socialization. And to be clear, I want to be very clear with this. Your extended family is still in your family bubble, even though you might not see them, but once or twice a year, people try to put those in the exosystem. They are not, because we have phones, we have email, they're just still a part of your family. They may not have like the day-to-day influence on a child, but they're still part of your family. So family on its own, any part of your family, extended or not, is still in your microsystem. People like to put it out in the exosystem, but they're still part of the family. Yeah. And so that keeps it a little bit clearer. So make sure you know this term, socioeconomic status. You might hear me say SES. In fact, I will put that right here, SES. It's that rank or position in society, and it's based on social economic factors. So social is like saying classes, and we'll talk about that next, but economic factors have to do with going to college and getting a better job or making a lot of money, right? Even in the beginning of the chapter, it talked about Prince William. He did sort of go through school and went through the military and things like that, but his money has always been there for him, right? And this is that ascribed status. It just like, basically he was born into it. So think of like the Kardashians. Like any child in that family was born into this ascribed status. Do they have to achieve anything? Do those children have to be like Instagram influencers? No, but Instagram influencers are achieved. Make sense? So even something like Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook, he achieved that. He wasn't born into that. His children are born into that wealth, right? He does have children now, which is interesting. And then we talked about what type of societies, like our traditional society, like something that relies on customs, not costumes, customs. Just a little bit of my, let's cancel that, a little bit of my learning disability that comes out every once, wait, C-U-S-T-O-M-S, C-U-S-T-O-M-S. Customs, there we go. It's a society that relies on customs handed down. So a traditional society was like, this is how our ancestors did it, and this is how generations before, and we value that. Great. A modern society, not so much. Modern society is like, okay, that's what you did, but we're going to do this instead. It's new and it's fresh and it's high tech and all this business. So again, families who are steeped in tradition have a different way of marrying, divorcing, not marrying, not divorcing, right? And modern society people have a different way of marrying, divorcing, or not marrying and not divorcing, right? So again, it's like the style, like the mode. I kind of call this kind of like, not versus, but like an iPhone versus like a Samsung phone, you know? So I look at it like one is this way and one is this way. It doesn't mean they're wrong. They're just a choice. And then this is a little piece about, I kind of replicated what was here in the book on family. Let's make sure I get it right. Let me see. I have the loose leaf version of the book. And this is roughly from page 107. It's like a little kind of a rainbow, little skinny triangle. And so we don't really talk about so much the class system in this country, but it's still here, right? In other countries like India, that's very pronounced, and they'll say, well, you're the poor class, or, you know, we can't help you. That's part of their culture. You know, in our culture, a lot of us want to help people who have less than. And so this is all based on education, job type, and income, right? You could have zero education and just, you know, have invented something and make a lot of money. Or you could have a ton of education and get all your money away, right? What we're finding here is over the course of the pandemic, the capitalist class was the only class that grew in wealth. Like the guy who owns Amazon, you know, all those things, you know, all the, so you might hear that these people make the most money. Yeah, they do. It's pretty wild. I'm not going to go too far into it, but think of it this way, in terms of our class, how people are listed is how they raise people. People in the capitalist class don't always raise their own children. They have nannies. They have housekeepers. They have people who do it for them. Yeah. So again, going back to Prince William, yeah, he would be here. I mean, he doesn't own millions and millions of dollars of businesses, but he's got the income, right? Upper middle classes, and you'll see, like, these are maybe business owners. Yeah. And then middle class is very common. The working class, middle class and working class are typically the largest, right? And the underclass is getting a little bit bigger. We have a big homeless issue here in California. It's never going to go away. But again, these are shifting a lot, but getting bigger where, yeah, not always in a good way. But again, we're not talking about politics right now. We're talking about how this affects the raising of a child. Right? So when parents like lose their job and they're frustrated, do they take it out on the kid physically sometimes? And we'll talk about parenting styles in the next chapter, about how working class parents have different ways of raising children, right? And more physical, more do as I say, not as I do. And so that has a lot to do with with money and education. Again, the operational definition. So I like this term, operationally defining something. So like if you said, oh, my family's pretty good, like I had a good childhood. Well, what does that mean? Because somebody else could say the same thing and clearly did not have a similar information. So we try to take terms that are agreed upon. A good childhood would be financially stable, parents are together, doesn't necessarily be married, but something that's identifiable and measurable between two different things is called the operational definition. So sometimes when my son's school will call and say, like, he had a really bad day. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Okay, well, he refused to do his homework. Okay, that's different than kicking over a chair. So give me something operationally definable, right? Something that's what exactly happened, right? Also, when we talk about, you know, people say, oh, my family was wealthy. That doesn't necessarily mean they were wealthy. They just provided everything for you. And so you, as a child, you don't exactly know what that means until you get older. You're like, oh, well, we really didn't have a lot of money, but my parents still provided, right? Or vice versa. My parents had a ton of money, but they never spent it on us. Like, so again, what is this operational definition of economic resources, or how wealthy or what class we're in? It has to share these definable terms. Social capital is huge, especially now. Social capital is that thing that you have, capital meaning investments or things that you have that you don't have to buy. It's like friendship, support. When you like literally, like if you needed to borrow $20, who could you call? Right? if you had a vent about a really terrible date or a terrible day at work, who would you call? Right? And so do you have supports? Do you have people who can help in a time of need? That's a social capital is, and that is huge. That's what we are trying to provide here at SCC, is a little bit more social capital for groceries and books and tuition and things like that. And again, sorry, I'm not going to go in too far about social selection, the social causation. Again, this right here, I will tell you, this book is great, but there are certain things we're going to skip those. These are two German words that say something very similar to what we've already learned: collectivism and individualism. So I'm never going to check. I'm never going to test you on the German words. Never. Why would I do that? This is not a German class. I come from German heritage, and maybe that's like trigger warning for me because the German language and the German culture is very specific, and so I don't expect you guys to be in there. Let's keep with collectivism and individualism. Again, collectivism, doing it all together. We support each other. We're, how you behave reflects on us, and then the opposite is individualism, right? Number one at all costs. Number one at all costs. Number go, right? So again, let's think of collectivism even in here. We tend to be more individualistic up here and be more collectivistic towards the bottom. But if you had a collectivistic capitalist class, this is when you start seeing rich people paying for things. Like when you have, I forgot what's his name, Mark Cuban, who's creating like a prescription drug website where things are a lot cheaper. He's starting to see like, hey, it's all about us. It's not about me. Even when Bill Gates just got divorced, Melinda Gates gave like money away. Jeff Bezos, when he got divorced, his wife, boom, gave a bunch of money away. So you're going to see this conflict with two parents thinking differently about, this is about us, or no, this is about me. It's kind of wild. And what do you think those kids are learning? Again, cultural orientation and our socialization differences. Make sure you know this word norms. It's not the restaurant on Main and 17th. It literally means normative, like normal things that we expect. So rules, patterns, and standards that express cultural values. Like a norm is that we drive on the right-hand side of the road. A norm is that, you graduate high school. It's not everybody's personal norm, but is typically our societal norms. Again, interpersonal, like, and when you have this is this majority. I'm going to do this. I'm going to color that orange a little bit. Well, that's not hard. That's not easy to see. I'm going to color that yellow. Right. And the minority, so I put all these terms together. So America is the majority, is very individualistic, right? Number one at all costs. Low context, we learned about that in Unit 1. And this is the same German term. I know some people really like to know every word. I'm just going to cross it out. The minority is like the subcultures. We have America, but we have all these little subcultures. Is more collectivistic, more high context. And let me make this a color. Let's make this like super hot pink. Ooh, it's hard to read, but that's hard to read. I'll make it like lighter pink. That sounds good. Okay. And then I will cross this guy out right here. Okay. So again, you're going to see this, how do people of these orientations even respond to nature? This is, to me, how I know out of the blue, because I'm like a little bit of a nature gal. When people say, well, I see that mountain and I could strip mine it, or I could make a tunnel through it, or we need to fly over it, or we need to put our train tracks around it, I can improve nature. Bridges and whatnot, like I can fix that. And then the more collectivistic is like, no, we're one with nature. There are seasons and we don't need to divert a river to build something. How about we just build it elsewhere, right? Cherish values, tradition versus achievement. How about time? Better plan for the future. You got to know your major. You got to do all this stuff. Do it now. Or we just focus on the present and just take one step at a time. So again, think about these socialization areas and these different contexts, how they behave in different situations. Again, all this is happening in one family, happening in two different families, the same in both families, different in two, there's a lot. And again, what is a child exposed to? Yeah. And this is what we teach. I like this picture too. You have maybe like typically Caucasian women who married into a family. I wonder if he's the groom, but maybe she married another woman. Like, I can't exactly figure it out. But I like this picture because it has kind of like a bunch of different things happening at the same time, a bunch of different cultures kind of commingling. I love it. And again, these are the questions that kind of match in our orientation. Like, these are the questions when you start asking yourself, because you will be providing your own Bronfenbrenner, of you. Now, religion, huge piece, right? Huge piece. We are kind of in always, this video, people are going to watch this all the time, but we're always in some sort of religious, season right now. I see this one as maybe because I see like a crucifix on the wall. I'm thinking this in a picture of the Pope, most likely Catholic. He looks like he's maybe in high school, had his confirmation situation. This kind of looks like awkwardly my family in the 80s, fashion and stuff. But religion is a huge part of how children are raised, what the religious dogma says or the teachings and things like that. It came from this Protestant ethic, and Protestants were one of the first more religious groups that came here seeking religious freedom in America. But it was like, work hard and save your money and life is tough, and then that's the point. I put here, Carl Jung stated that religious people are more likely to comply with societal norms, especially if they believe those norms are divinely sanctioned. Again, even on this Pew Research one, there was an article back there that said evangelical Christians favor procreation. Well, is that part of their teaching? Sure is, right? And they feel that that's the rules. They have to follow the rules. Yeah. Oh, stress. All of this can cause stress in a family, even if the family stays together, right? So physical stressors, sociocultural stressors, psychological stressors. So like, for example, if you have somebody who's ill, somebody's disabled, right? Abuse, that's your physical stressors, the things that physically stress your body. Sociocultural stressors, are you in a crowded living area? Do you have to deal with noise, pollution? We just had a fire over here. It's like, ugh, like our culture, we have like fire seasons, although it's all year now. And then psychological stressors like pressure, threats, school, finals, like all that stuff. How about all this? COVID, physical stressors, sociocultural stressors, psychological. Yes. So guess what? We have all, for the first time in our like last 100 years, we are all sort of in the same trauma and resilience bucket. Yeah. And I'll keep you guys posted on that. We have a lot more things happening here on campus for trauma and resilience. I want to make sure that you guys are getting all the support that you need. Okay. Another, again, I put this picture back in here because immigration. So this is the chrono system, right? Chrono system. How has a family changed over the years, right? Immigration. People are still getting deported. People are getting stopped at the border. Families getting separated. When again, our country was built on come over to our country and make it better. My grandfather immigrated here in 1912. Didn't speak a lick of English. He changed his name to Johnny from Vaslav. And learned English, worked for a company, a family, and worked all the way up and went to NYU, got his degree, worked in aerospace, moved out to California. I mean, like, talk about the American dream. And now we're telling everybody go away. It's like, makes no sense. Now we're having this big, we might have a big influx of Ukrainian refugees. They said that was the largest exodus out of a country. They got 10% of the country out in a week, which is 2 million people. Yikes, right? So we're going to see a lot of changing families, right? Every once in a while, when there's this mass need for housing refugees, you'll have people who are like, yeah, I have an extra room. Please come live here. I'll donate the time or whatever. And so you will see a lot of changes on families. How does this affect children? Innumerable ways. Another picture here too. Look at this. This is like Sunday finest, best shoes, best hat, best jacket with fur. Like this is, yeah, this is a big deal. This is kind of like my people, like Eastern Europe again. Economic changes, the chrono system, like whew, families are making, they're making the same amount of money with a bigger cost of inflation. How about cost of living? Even though minimum wage changes, then everything else, all the prices go up on everything else. Again, the lower class system, people who work but still can't afford things. I mean, I would like to say things have changed for the better. Some ways yes, some ways no. Chrono system influence, how about technology on families? Holy cow. I like to think of this long relationship with technology. My mother-in-law was like, you know, this might be prior to that time, those pictures, but she was the first family on the house to have a television. And now she's got an iPhone 12 in her hands. Wow. To go from zero technology to following technology almost. Wow. Ours are like, we go from like an iPhone 10 to an iPhone 11, iPhone, like the changes are drastic, but they're not as drastic as they've been over the last 50 years. I just really like appreciate the fact that she's kept up on it. It's pretty amazing. She's in her 70s. Wow. Right. So again, how do we help families get through all this business? Information. If you have social media, let's use our technology to get more information and resources. The big project in this class is we're going to have a family project, and we're going to help this family out. It's actually a real family. It's all based in reality. But again, we teach families how to help each other, love and acceptance, communication, learning more things, reading more books, maybe joining a club, church is great, anything like that. Whatever a family needs to be a better family is family support, and helps empowering family to essentially cope with stress, not transition, or transition into something more stronger, more cohesive. And the last is outcomes. Obviously there's positive and negative outcomes, but again, when your family really advocates for social connection, the positive outcome is that there's achievement. You know, we do live in a place where we achieve things with other people in the mix. And again, we don't want to say win at all costs, but yeah, I mean, there's this piece where you want your child to achieve something, whether that's a job, independence, relationship, you know, financial strength. Yeah, when you have a positive outcome, you achieve what you want to achieve. The opposite is like, no, you didn't achieve anything, and you're staying at home, and you didn't never get a job, and you don't have a relationship, and you didn't finish school, and right. The emotional dimension, it's like the positive is good strong self-esteem, and the opposite is entitlement. We've seen that, right? Where families do literally teach entitlement. The cognitive dimension, the thinking dimension, with good support, you have a positive, strong IQ. Negative is saying, I'm better than everybody else, and those other people are horrible, and they are this way and that way. This is racism. The behavioral dimension is thinking and consciousness, and knowing your place in the universe, but also knowing like, what is the state of other people's place in the universe? Or your behavior, you're not following the rules and you're incarcerated. Woof. Yeah. So the family has a lot to do with supporting a child, socializing a child over their lifetime to a positive or negative outcome. That's the point of all this. That's the point of all this. Okay, good. So we hit it a little bit over an hour. I think we're doing great. I'm glad that you guys are here. I'm glad you're learning about this stuff. When these terms apply to you, make a note of it, because it's going to help you later. Again, get that blank Bronfenbrenner and start filling it in. Oh, well, my parents got divorced here, or this is our religion, or this is our culture, or this is our orientation. This helped create who I am today. This is the point of this entire class. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon. Always reach out for support. I'm here for you guys. Okay, talk to you soon.